Well, while that's being fixed, firstly, I'd like to say good morning to each and every one of you. And can I firstly extend my thanks to the University of Washington and sponsors for inviting me all the way to, yes, your beautiful city of Tacoma to speak to you about the city's approach to inclusive governance. And I want to extend a special thanks to Mayor Victoria Woododds, Ali, and also Mark Pagano for bringing me here today. It's a real pleasure. So why am I here today? Well, as you heard, I'm here to talk about the work that we've been doing in Bristol since we took power in May 2016. My presentation is going to detail the One City approach and how we as a city are trying new approaches to innovate and collaborate as a whole new city. Many forces are shaping Bristol's path as a city, including national government policy, migration, trade, markets, conflict, climate change, and the rising polarizing ideologies. Meanwhile, we have specific challenges such as an aging population, social inequality, and unsustainable resource consumption demand a rapid response. And the One City approach is Bristol's response to that. Now, I'm hoping, got it right, okay, excellent, thank you. So, hello from Bristol. So, first of all, what is Bristol and where are we? So we are an extremely diverse and vibrant city. We're internationally connected through our citizens, culture, and trade. We are based in the southwest of England and are the 10th largest city in the UK with approximately 460,000 people, and we continue to grow. We also work with our neighbouring authorities, and together we form the West of England region with a population of around 1.1 million. We are 1 hour, 20 minutes from London by train, and we also host both an international airport and we have a major seaport. Bristol is consistently, and this is where we will contend, right? We are rated as one of the best places to live and visit in the UK, and we're always topping #1 charts from around the world. So, yeah, we're toing and froing between Bristol and Tacoma. But with its wealth of culture, our dynamic food scene, festivals and events, together with its attractiveness, friendliness and accessibility, we have a visitor economy in excess of 1.4 billion, supporting both leisure and business tourism. But like all cities, Bristol has its challenges. The city's success does not reach everyone and brings some difficult issues, such as a higher cost of living, traffic congestion, and an acute shortage of homes, affordable homes. So, however, the city's collective determination, collaboration, and long record of creativity and innovation means tackling these issues effectively is a realistic goal that we are working with our partners to achieve. So let me give you a little bit more key information about our city. So our city is truly diverse. We represent over 187 countries of birth. We have over 91 languages are spoken and over 45 religions. 8.3% of our population are students, with an increasing student international population. Bristol invests and works together with our communities and neighbourhood, and our vision is that we play a leading role in driving a city of hope and aspiration where everyone can share in its success. We recognise the importance of inclusivity, reaching out and working in partnership with our city strategies, and they are based on this approach. Building on our diversity, working on inclusion, working to make the best opportunities for all. Bristol City Council is a council city leadership, aims to support Bristol's strong economy that is inclusive and sustainable. So there is a picture of our young mayor, Marvin Rees, and he often quotes, to be a global city, you need to interact with the world. Marvin was elected alongside myself in 2016, and he was the first mayor of African Caribbean origin ever elected in the whole of Europe as a leader of a major city. So that says a lot about the UK and Europe generally. But Marvin has always had a view that, we may be local, but we have to think global, and that's what we're doing. So being open to working with local people and with others globally is, we think, a key to our success. And the City Council and our city partners therefore reach out to others locally and globally as just a normal way of working. So in the UK, city leadership is very important, as the country is one of the most centralised countries in the world. As a city around the world, we cannot and will not wait for national government to deliver. So we are getting on and forging ahead, providing our own solutions at city level to address the challenges that I set out earlier. We need global governance to move into its next iteration. And this involves cities and our international network cities sitting alongside national and international leaders as equal partners. So I just want to give you a little insight to the financial situation in Bristol, so you can see the challenges that we are facing. So we are working in an extremely challenging environment, and Andy, you know that because you're from Leeds and you're facing the same issues. So this slide demonstrates the context in which local authorities are operating. We usually call it the graph of doom, actually. That's what local authorities call it. Well, that is the reality. So as you can see, central government funding has dropped in the last 10 years by 78%. And by 2020, we will receive no further funding from central government. So as a city, we have to look at different ways in which we can actually keep going for the citizens. And as I'm not sure for yourselves, but as a city, we actually deliver all of the services. It's not like kind of Tacoma, you've got this double tier system, but we deliver all of the services. And our biggest challenges and the challenges that face all local authorities are adult social care and children's services. They are consistently busting the budget because the need continues to be great. But we continue to focus on our shared priorities and demonstrate active city leadership. And in spite of the challenges that we are facing, we still ensure that we protect the services that we deliver to the most vulnerable in our society. So many cities have closed their libraries. We've kept all 27 open. Many people have shut their children's centre. We've kept all 22 open. We have a council tax reduction scheme. Though it's going up, we ensure that the most vulnerable and the poorest in our city are still able to live and work and kind of sustain their life and families. In October, we had the honour of hosting the Global Parliament of Mayors Summit. It provided a space for mayors from around the world, alongside city network leaders and experts from international organisations and industry, to share agreed priorities for which we must raise our voice collectively. The outcome of the debate between mayors led to the Bristol Declaration. The majority of the GPM members voted in favour of commitments and calls for national government and international institutions to include and collaborate with city leaders. The voting led to the Bristol Declaration, which says that citizens of the world will need global governance to evolve, seeing cities and international networks sit alongside national and international leaders as equal partners in shaping global policy. And there's a picture at the end of the summit. And I think in the end, we had over 80, nearly 90 mayors, and I mean across the globe, from Africa, Asia, Europe, even here from the United States. So let me talk about the inspiration for the One City plan and what we now call the One City approach in Bristol. So we had high hopes. High Hopes was a vision document that Bristol's business community put together in 2011. It talked about the potential change that could be achieved if businesses and other sectors came together to drive change collectively. Leading the Inclusive City by Professor Robin Hambleton, who I know is known very well by Ali. He himself is based in Bristol at the University of West of England, and he has spent a lot of time in Chicago, and he provided the academic framework for the approach that we have taken in Bristol. The theory on the slide behind me shows 4 forces that shape the space for political agency in just about any place, whether it's Bristol or Tacoma or any city in the Western world. So economy, governance, social, cultural, and environmental limits. The next stage of the theory, within this space, there are likely to be 5 overlapping realms of leadership. This is idealized, but helps clarify the range of actors who can ideally contribute to local leadership. All are important. And in Bristol, we are very strong on place-based leadership, and the One City approach lies at the heart of this flower diagram. So now moving on into moving the theory into practice. In July 2016, so 2 months after Marvin was elected. Hold on, I haven't done it, hold on. Okay, sorry, thank you. So in July 2016, Mayor Marvin Rees brought together 70 of the city's leaders from business, the police, fire, which we call Blue Light Services, the universities, the voluntary and charity sectors, health services, and faith communities. We estimated that the reach and spend of all of those organisations in the room exceeded several billion and reached hundreds of thousands of people, and we in turn employed tens of thousands of individuals. Imagine the potential if they worked together, even on only 1 or 2 priorities together, we could achieve so much more. And also imagine how improved our outcomes could be if we helped share decision-making, rather than make major decisions about services to our citizens and where we shall invest in the future in isolation. So this coming together led to the conclusion that we needed a shared vision and a plan to help us shape our future and give common aim that transcends political boundaries and a framework through which city leaders could regularly and easily come together. So as you can see, the problem we have been trying to solve and continue to solve, and it's something that you are faced with here, is that we had hundreds of unaligned city strategies right across the city, most of which were only 5 years or less. There was no framework to easily bring together our city leaders, and the One City vision and the plan is our attempt to frame and focus the debate and create this citywide leadership model. And that, in turn, harnesses the potential of our collective power to benefit the city. So here's the plan. I have a copy here. Okay, only 1 copy. We use PDF, so if you want a copy, you can download it. But one of the things I will say about this, I do have this habit, I will tell you now, of kind of slightly going off piste. But when we started the journey, everyone was really transfixed on getting this document together. And I think the culture of the city and the culture of institutions is you can't do anything unless it's written down and you've got something in a plan and it's telling you what to do. But as I said earlier, we have hundreds of strategies, most of which were gathering dust on everybody's bookshelves. And so After about a year into kind of like looking at what this framework was going to be, we realized it isn't really just about the plan. It is more so about the approach. And there was a light bulb moment, not only for the mayor, but for all of the other leaders in the room at the time. And so, but we did manage to get this plan up and running, and we actually launched it in January of this year. It sets out our vision to 2050 as a fair, healthy and sustainable city. And one of the things, this is work in progress. So we've made it quite clear that this plan, we will update the plan on a yearly basis because we don't know, government may change, Brexit may not happen. Trump might be impeached, I don't know. Hey, but obviously the impact of the, because there are quite a number of priorities that we have here from now until 2050, but it incorporates all of our key partners' kind of priorities and visions, and we all came together to decide what those priorities were. And for 2019, in fact, I'm really pleased to say that we had over 250 leaders in the room, and we decided the priorities for 2019, alongside our main key priorities, was tackling kind of serious violence, gangs and street conflict, period poverty, and also ensuring that the 3 poorest neighbourhoods in our city have access to affordable childcare. So let me just move on. So the One City Plan sets out very clearly what it is and what it is not. So a lot of the work that was carried out on the narrative and the key points have ensured that we framed it in the correct way for the city to use the plan. So as you can see, the One City Plan is an attempt to focus the city on a sequence of key outcomes. It's an attempt to describe what it will be like to be in Bristol and to be Bristolian in the years to come. It's something to actually grapple with, because I think some people still couldn't get their concept around the need for having something on paper. But it's a tool to enable our partners and the wider city to engage in a meaningful way. It's also a way to sequence activity as a city so that we can deliver on kind of key early outcomes, and longer term goals can be possible to achieve. And as I said, it is constantly in review. So actually twice a year, we bring together all city partners. So 6 months from now, we will bring everybody back into the room and we will give everybody a progress report and an update. And the one thing I will say, that what this One City Plan is not, and as I said earlier, it is not, it doesn't belong to Bristol City Council. This is truly a plan for the whole city. So if the mayor is no longer in power, nobody else can come to the city and throw it away, because this is owned by the whole city, and they'd have a hard job trying to wrestle it away from all of our kind of key partners, because a lot of time and effort has gone into delivering that. But what the One City Plan is not, as I said, is a plan to usurp all other plans. So even though there are all the strategies and plans sitting on shelves, we recognise that organisations will continue to have their own plans and strategies. It's not a perfect document, as I said. It's kind of like an instruction manual, but it's not an instruction manual. It really is truly up to partners to decide if, what and how they will change to achieve our shared overarching goals. It's not a bureaucratic barrier. The plan should not stifle innovation and other work that's occurring in the city. And as I said, it's not complete. There is no such thing as a final version, because it will always be in constant review. So the plan is divided into 6 core themes: connectivity, economy, environment, health and well-being, homes and communities, learning and skills. As these were felt, based on ongoing engagement with partners, to be the key different aspects in the city. Each of these have a vision for where we as a city want to be in that area by 2050, and it sets out key priorities. These are expected to stay constant, as I said earlier, going into the future. underneath each of these is 3 priorities per theme for each year from now until 2050. So that's 18 per year, 46 key priorities from now until 2050. As I said, they will be refreshed every year, and we shall be improving and making the document a lot more sophisticated as each year passes, and as more partners become involved and take ownership. Yeah, this one I'm still trying to get my head around. So, hey, bear with me on this one. So this diagram sets out the meeting flow for the city. It provides a key framework for key leaders to come together on a regular basis, to plan collectively for the future, and take responsibility for the delivery of their parts of the timeline and the vision. It includes the city gathering, so over 200 plus organisations meeting twice a year, with a new version, as I said, of the plan being launched every January. We have a number of key boards in the city, so we did not have to reinvent the wheel. So who, in addition to meeting themselves, they come together once a quarter and then escalate some of the issues up to city leaders who will meet on a quarterly basis through a breakfast group. That's bringing together 20 of the city's CEOs who meet quarterly to discuss the key issues in the city and agree how to unblock any issues that are cross-sector. We also have city office drop-ins. So we provide a space just outside the mayor's office, we call it Cabinet Corner, but we have another space alongside cabinet members. And we invite anyone in the city to come together once a month to talk about key issues and to network. We are also about to appoint a new city office team. It's a team of seconded officers from a wide range of institutions, including the universities, the police, First Bus, our transport hub, and of course the council. So each year the city, as I said, will prioritise facilitating 3 citywide actions from the year's list of 18. That doesn't mean to say that the 15 won't happen, because they will, but we've kind of, like, as I said earlier, prioritised the 3 most emerging key focus for ourselves, and there you have it. Poverty, period poverty. You do know what I mean by period poverty, don't you? Okay, you should have just said. Okay, so believe it or not, in Bristol, in England, young girls either miss school because they can't afford to buy sanitary towels, and in this day and age in 2019. So some girls who, because of their background, poverty, because they can't afford, they don't go to school, they're missing their lessons, they are sometimes bullied by their teachers, so named and shamed in front of their peers, and it's quite embarrassing. So one of the things that my colleague, our cabinet member for women, children and families, is we've launched the ending of period poverty. So we are going to ensure that every single institution, colleges, schools, community centres, we started off at the City Council, will provide free sanitary products in every single bathroom across the whole city, so nobody has to worry about that. So Marvin came up with the big idea of big offer, big ask. Sometimes I say to him, I wish you hadn't done that, because we have just been inundated. But the key part of the One City approach is the concept of big offer, big ask. And what we're doing is encouraging organisations to think about how they work and what they need in a big offer, big ask framework. So what is their offer to the city, and what do they need from the city to make it happen? And this has helped bring and rally resources around those key city priorities. So when I was talking about ending period poverty, can you imagine? So we're in the room in January with about 250 key leaders, majority of men, and the men the majority who voted for those top 3 priorities. That says a lot about those men in the room at that time, because they could have chosen something far more, which was a little bit less, kind of out there. But yeah, that was quite a proud day for both Marvin and ourselves and Councillor Godwin, that they actually chose that as the number 2. It's down here as number 3, but it was actually the number 2 emerging priority that they wanted to see tackle. And as a result of that, we've just been inundated by funding and offers and businesses and everybody saying, we will help, we'll offer you funding, we'll make sure that we make our toilets accessible to the public. It's just amazing. So there you have it. So Councillor Godwin, she's leading on that work. So as you can see, over 140,000 girls nationwide miss school. So we wanted the city a city free from period poverty. We've committed funding to ensure free sanitary products for kids, and our ask was to make a financial contribution, and I think we had that within less than a week. That money was already on the table, and it's growing and growing. And we've also, in kind of strategically in key organisations across the city, we've asked of the city, the residents, so there's something called kind of like a red box, and it's like a donation box. So if you want to go shopping and you want to buy some sanitary products and you kind of want to give them away, then there are red boxes across the city that you can just buy and make your own personal donation. Adoption and fostering was another big offer and kind of big ask. So we have 620 children who are currently in care who need the local authority to act as a parent, and we really don't have enough foster carers in Bristol. And our offer is Bristol to be a city where every child lives with a family. So our ask of the city is to help us recruit 77 new carers to give children that care and a chance to live in Bristol, stay at school, keep in touch with their family. So moving on to the Inclusive Cities programme. We are I'm really proud to be part of this particular initiative. To be an inclusive city, it can't be done on our own. It is a city effort, and we convene and coordinate. But our examples of the work that we do are that we have a local housing association, for example, that works with community organisations to organise neighbourhood conversations, pop-up interactive events, active citizens training, and they're making a film on Bristol's values. Community activists organise peace feasts, befriending schemes, street parties, inclusion days, and a community iftar, where over 800 people from different backgrounds share food on a yearly basis. We have a very, very strong mentoring programme, giving asylum seekers and refugees emotional support when going to court and attending other difficult meetings. We also have a local citizens group, which is promoting community sponsorship of refugees based on the Canadian model, and the first community sponsorship family was welcomed to our city in 2018. And Ashley Community Housing is an organisation that was set up by refugees and has over 100 housing units for new refugee and asylum-seeking communities. It's also running a positive action jobs programme, and they've helped over 100 refugees already find work. And they recently celebrated helping to get, I think, up to 15 members from the refugee community as qualified bus drivers, and they've now become, bus drivers in the city. I could go on and on and on about all of the things that we're doing, but one of the things I am extremely proud of is the fact that we are truly a welcoming city and a city of sanctuary. The one thing that Marvin will always say is that, like I said, when I was talking about being local but also acting globally, the reality is when government sets their agenda, it's the city who has to deliver on that agenda, and it's the city who gets the stick from the local communities. So, do you know something? Give up the power, give it to the cities, devolve that power to cities, and let us get on and do what it is that we need to do, because I think we're better at it than central government. And on that note, I'd like to thank you all very much for listening. But if you have any questions, please do ask away. So, I think I've got some time.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. So who would like to kick off? Have you got a question?
Okay, I'll go first.
Oh, cool. Sorry, yes, hi.
Hello. Well, it's very impressive and very exciting to think of how we could do something similar here.
Yes.
And so one of my first questions is, how did you get people to come to the table?
Right. So I'm going to say, I said it last night and I'm going to say it again, okay? Our mayor, Marvin, is, he's a bit like Victoria. He's extremely charismatic, but his moral compass is completely straight. You can't get any straighter. And it's kind of like we're having our Obama moment in Bristol. Marvin has the capacity to just coalesce people around him, and it's consistent. He can click his fingers and get 200 people in a room. When he goes out and speaks to communities, and between me and him, we go out in every ward. We get invited to everybody. We go and we talk to people. We don't spin anything. What you see is what you get. And I think we're a breath of fresh air. I think there was some concern when Marvin was initially voted in. They were thinking, who is this young guy, middle manager? I mean, if you know his journey and you read his background, some people would say, you were never destined to become the mayor of a city, particularly given our background with the transatlantic slave trade and racism and all of the stuff that we have to deal with. But we have cut through that. He's grown into the role, and they've never come across the kind of leadership that is truly inclusive. And that's what's really important. We're not playing lip service, really. We really mean what we say. And we're giving the whole city an opportunity to kind of lead. It's not in our gift alone. We constantly say to people, we can't tackle air pollution. It's not in the gift of the local authority to tackle the issues around air pollution, and many of the other kind of issues around kind of housing that we face. So, yeah, it's substance more so over style, but also his style is one of kind of coalescing, inclusivity, and walking his talk. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, of course.
All right.
Oh, okay.
We're going
Right,
back
yeah,
and
There are
forth.
2 lines.
Hiya. 2 lines. Okay, cool.
So thank you so much for being here. I was curious, I noticed it looked like you had the Sustainable Development Goals
Yes, we do.
icons on the bottom.
They
So
are.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, so I was at World Parliament actually this year, which was held in Toronto. And so one of the things I was curious about is how did the Sustainable Development Goals influence this process, and how have you been able to integrate those goals into this larger one city plan?
Right, okay, well, in terms of the sustainable, well, it's important. Every single city, every country, we have a commitment to kind of delivering on those goals. And obviously, they chime with a number of the priority areas that we have. So we were very cognizant of that fact, and whilst we were working on the development of the plan, our eyes were always on those key goals and how we can help to deliver on each of the sustainable goals around the priorities that we have. We also were part of a Rockefeller-funded initiative as well as a city. So we've actually, we're a resilient, one of a number of resilient cities. And again, the Sustainable Development Goals kind of drove that piece of work. And again, the plan that we produced as a part of being a resilient city, some of the key actions and recommendations also kind of has come through this one city plan. Because everything that we do, we're trying not to do it from, like I said, a council perspective. It it truly is a perspective in relation to the city and how we're going to address some of the wicked issues that we're facing. So, is that okay? Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Love what you're doing. I love the introspectiveness of the one city, but I'm also concerned because if I've learned anything in our community is that these are regional issues.
Yeah.
You know, when you start talking about the gang violence and the homelessness and all that, they become more regional.
Yes.
And I'm a little concerned by Bristol One City because Bristol, you start there. And so what I'd like to see or like to hear is how you work with Bath, with Gloucester, and you know the other 750,000 people that really you push around back and forth.
Well, it's easy peasy, really. I'm joking, but I'm not really joking. So again, I go back to the style of leadership. So we are so. You know, you'd call it blue surrounded by a sea of red. We're red surrounded by a sea of blue. So our three neighboring authorities are what you would call Republicans. We call them conservatives. And you would never think, given where we sit along the political spectrum, that we would get on, the city would get on. And remember, we have the majority of the kind of citizens, most of the pressures, they enjoy, you know, kind of being far more rural. There's a lot of NIMBYism as well. Yeah. But we do have a regional governance structure. And it's called West of England. We have a regional mayor. How effective he is another story, but I know that...
But how often do you get together with the other communities?
Monthly.
To share common issues?
Oh, no, on a regular basis. So the infrastructure is in place. The mayor, they selected a kind of regional mayor, and actually it is Marvin and the other two actually neighbouring authorities because North Somerset decided that they didn't want to be part of the party. So the three, cities together, we come together on a regular basis, and we work on education and skills collectively, planning, so looking at what the housing needs are going to be over the next few years, so regional spatial planning, transport, etc. So even though we're taking a one city approach, we're also trying to kind of take that into the kind of wider
That's what I wanted
region.
to hear.
Okay, of course. Thank you. Hi.
Hi. My question has to do with youth and to what extent they drove or will drive the process. Your highest priorities seem to be youth-focused. And one of the challenges, we have many challenges, but one of them is involving youth in a really meaningful way and driving the process. Yeah. Too often we find people saying, oh yes, we have a youth commission, we have a youth this, a youth that, but who's really driving it in order to address those very critical issues that were identified?
Okay. Well, like yourselves, we do have a youth council, but we made it over the last kind of 2 years of having those discussions. We went out and spoke to kind of university students, school sixth forms, and other young people so that we could kind of hear their voices. I think there's a lot more we can do, and we can do better in terms of kind of engaging them on a regular basis. But the reality is, the one thing Marvin always said, you know, one of our members of the team, he's just had a baby, and he's saying it's quick. It's weird how quickly 32 years are going to pass. And, you know, by 2050, that baby will become a young man, and that will go really quickly. So we have to focus our minds on the future. We're not the future. The future are young people, and that's why the vision of the One City plan and the approach it kind of focuses a lot on them, because they're the ones who are going to save our planet, hopefully save our city, and realise many of the goals that we have put in train. So, yeah. Hi? No? Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
On behalf of Urban Studies students, I'm in the housing course.
Hi.
Really liked your presentation.
Thank you.
And I love your necklace, by the way.
Sorry?
Your necklace is beautiful.
I know, it's great, isn't it? And the earrings. Okay. And I'm wearing your colours. I forgot to say. Hey, I'm in Washington colours.
Question. You mentioned earlier that you didn't have to reinvent the wheel on certain processes when it came to social things that arose, such as homelessness and things like that.
Yes.
How often do you implement that when you're in meetings, using what worked before for cities that mayors have used, or using other mayors that are outside of Bristol? How often do you look at what's working and just implement it to save time?
Hey, listen, if I had my way, I don't think I would ever be in Bristol. We get invited, myself and Marvin specifically, do get invited, and my other cabinet members, we get invited a lot to go to other parts of the world and learn best practice, talk about what we're doing in Bristol. But that's the one thing about me, I always tell people, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same result. So it's a time to think outside of the box. And this is why I really wanted to come to today's conference. It is about learning from other places and learning from other cities. My first trip, when I became a cabinet member, was to New York, and I'd just been given the public health portfolio, and I read and heard about Thrive New York, which is looking at mental health and well-being program that was launched by the First Lady of New York. And I spent a week in New York to look at what they were doing. Now, the difference between New York, and I was kind of blown away. You know, it was a year in train, so the First Lady had gone around every single kind of suburb, borough in New York, talking to local people about some of the issues. Because I think for her, she said that they, as a family, they were facing their own challenges with mental health. And even as a family that was privileged, had money and wealth, they found it difficult to navigate what was a very difficult terrain around kind of mental health and well-being. And so she was moved to this. So she said, if we're finding it difficult and we have access, how the hell can kind of ordinary people, how do they kind of manage? And so I light bulb moment for me. The only difference between Thrive New York and my Thrive in Bristol is that I don't have the £500 million that they enjoy. So they were able to muster the city resources, and obviously in America you have a huge kind of philanthropy and trusts and foundations giving funding. We were I was at a standstill. I came back infused and saying, we've got to do this. But that Thrive New York kind of philosophy and the way in which we're working is now driving our 10-year strategy around mental health and well-being. And again, using the one city approach, we have mustered the city around that, and there are key aspects of that program. It's not just being driven by the city council, it's being driven by the private sector, by the unions. We have Thrive Children, a thread around mental health and children. So for me, it really is important. I really am a practitioner when it comes to looking at best practice. If I think it's going to work in our city, hell yes, I'm going to take that learning. Thank you. Thank you. Hi.
Good morning. Thank you.
Morning.
I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
My concern is, I heard you mention that divisions is one of the big issues that you're trying to deal with. Mm-hmm. As I see the world and I see what's happening now with Brexit, and I see other things like that are happening, the cracks were always there, mm-hmm. but in a world where the internet and all the abilities to manipulate are there, mm-hmm. my question to you is, are there any methods or are there any strategies for countering this, lest your operating system be broken by an external force or maybe internal forces who don't really understand the power of division in taking your great city down?
Listen, I suppose, you know, we've bucked the system in Bristol. As I said, Marvin is the first mayor of African Caribbean descent, and that in itself, I think the city is still trying to get its head around, and they, like I said, they're not used to our type of inclusive leadership. I mean, the previous administrations before, including those in our own party, you could have access, but that access was very limited to certain people. Our administration, we provide access, and when we talk about access, we talk about access. So if your students wanted to come and have a conversation with me or Marvin, If you can find time in the diary, we will find that 15 minutes in the diary. If local people want us to come out and have a conversation, we don't put them off, because at the end of the day, we've been elected by local people. And also at the end of the day, we try, even though we are a Labour administration, again, Marvin's view is that the citizens don't really care what our political persuasion is. What they care about is their streets are clean, they have affordable housing, you're tackling homelessness, you just get on and do stuff. We will always have our haters, okay? Sure. Everybody does. And I don't think that we would necessarily have a strategy. All I would say is that it's about going out and kind of fronting and confronting those naysayers and those who want to try and derail us. But they can't. The machine is moving. We're not going anywhere, and we're hoping we have another 4 years. Because I also have to let you know that when we arrived in 2016, we were told by officers that we had a £7 million deficit. And when Marvin scratched the surface, that turned into £40 million deficit. And what had happened was the previous administration had kicked the problem down the road, assuming quite arrogantly that they were going to win, and they didn't. And so as a Labour administration, as somebody, as an organisation that is about social justice, we had to grapple with how the hell are we going to plug this gap and deliver on the manifesto pledges that we had. And so, yes, we had our detractors even in our own party, but Marvin was not going to kind of run that trail off the track. And we also needed to be taken seriously. Up until Marvin came into power, I think maybe before the Green Capital, when we won the Green Capital in Europe, Bristol was seen as a basket case, never really made any decisions, always kind of shied away from doing something really meaningful. And so, yeah, we're on a trajectory that unless we get derailed, we need another 4 years to kind of embed what we're doing into the DNA of the city.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello. Thank you so
Hi.
much for coming.
Oh, pleasure.
It's very interesting to know that the lack of sanitary towels doesn't just affect Africa alone, and there's other countries out there that are facing the same
Of course.
situation. So my question was, you mentioned that when you had the Global Parliament of Mayors,
Yes,
there were African leaders who came for the conference.
they did.
Would you mind telling me which African countries were in participation for that? And my second question would be, do you have any follow-up to know if they're doing any implementations of the one city concept in their countries?
I can't say as yet, and I now have to, you've really given me, I have to go away and think about that one. But we had a number of mayors that were there. We had mayors from kind of West Africa. Let's have a conversation outside, because I can actually kind of access and give you the list of all of the mayors from the African countries that were there. And obviously, as I said, Marvin he is one of the co-chairs of the Global Parliament of Mayors, so he is travelling quite extensively. And a couple of the African mayors are actually on the key executive of GPM. So, there are going to be key aspects of what we're trying to do that could translate to Africa. But I think many of the issues that African countries are contending with are very different to what we're dealing with in the West. And the issue of migration, for example, that was an interesting discussion that we had at the GPM, because I think everybody had a kind of a moment when, even I realised that migration is nothing in Africa. You're dealing with migration on huge levels, and the uproar and the pushback that we get from Europe. And I'm thinking it's just a drop in the ocean. It's just because Africa doesn't talk about the fact that we are dealing with millions of migrants and refugees on a basis. So, but yeah, I'll find you, I'll come and talk to you and tell you who we had. But I will say one thing that we did do. We did actually organise a side fringe event around women in leadership. I thought it was really important. If I had all these women mayors in the room, I was going to get them to talk about their journey around leadership. And hey, it was a full house. Everybody wanted to get. The mayor was really jealous because he couldn't come because he had to go to a boring AGM. But it was fascinating to hear about the journeys of those women from Africa, from America, from Europe, and actually the challenges that we actually face as women in leadership, particularly when we're leading key cities around the globe. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And I think,
Okay, I
one
took the
more.
opportunity to ask a second question. So you talked about the diversity of Bristol,
Yes.
and we have a pretty diverse city here as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the issues that we're grappling with here is access for people who are limited English speakers.
Yes.
And I'm interested to know how you tackle that question in Bristol.
Okay, so we have programs around kind of ESOL, English as a second language, but I think this is the problem that we have and why it's so important that we need to kind of really take control and do what we need to do, because the government policies just do not allow us, and the funding that we get do not allow us to kind of provide a lot of the English for speakers of other languages, housing opportunities, training, the rules and regulations make it so difficult. But as I say, we are a city of sanctuary, so as a local authority, we are investing a lot of our own resources into finding homes for many of those families. We rely a lot on the charity sector, kind of refugee organisations, and just ordinary citizens who are giving up maybe their second homes and allowing us to rent those properties to enable people to live. We've also got the other key issue of people who have no recourse to public funds. So again, we are working with a range of other organisations across the city and the private sector to kind of bring together resources to help those individuals. But it is a major challenge, and it doesn't help the policies of our government make it really, really difficult. People want to work. They want to make a contribution. Why is it that somebody who was a celebrated scientist in Syria or Libya or wherever they are from end up cleaning the toilets in our schools and it's a ridiculous waste of those skills. And actually, given the precipice called Brexit that we may fall over, they really need to think hard about what we are going to do, because the skills are actually there, and we're losing our European neighbours as we speak. They're flooding back and going back to Europe. I'm looking at the time, and I know I've got like 3 minutes. Yes.
Well, thank you for being here today. I noted that in your top 3 goals, that unsurprisingly, one of the top ones had to do with public safety, and it talked about gang violence and knife crime. And I would say that in our nation, that probably would be phrased as with gun crime rather than knife crime. But we are challenged here with the coming to a consensus about strategies around being able to do that and balancing them with rights and things to do that and keep from pointing fingers.
Sure.
So what sort of strategies did you find broad support for in your One City plan?
Okay, so one of the things that we're doing as a city is we are actually taking a public health approach to street violence and conflict and knife crime. So, kind of in London, it feels like it's an epidemic, and it is bubbling under the surface here in Bristol. And Glasgow in Scotland, 10, 12 years ago, it was the kind of knife capital of Europe, as it was known. And over the last 10 years, by taking much more of a public health approach to tackling the violence, they have seen a reduction of nearly 60% of kind of knife crime in the city. So I visited Glasgow, myself and my other colleagues, alongside the police. Again, one city approach. This isn't about the police dealing with this on their own. So a group of us went to Glasgow to actually see how they made it work. And I realized that we had all of the kind of ingredients that were needed to really tackle the issue head on. We have the information. So we use a lot of predictive data analytics. So we have a lot of information. We know the gangs. We know who the young people are in the gangs. We have actually even done a kind of profiling, kind of using something called adverse childhood experiences. So we can map and see from the top 120 kind of gang members, you can look at, 100% involved in crime, 89% of their families were engaged in crime. How many dropped out of school? How many of their families dropped out of school? And it goes on, and it goes on, and you can kind of map. So the police have also taken an approach that, particularly for younger people, we don't want to make them perpetrators. They are victims. Many of them are being exploited, and they are victims of their own circumstances. So we have put together a whole range of. We're developing a new strategy, and that strategy will actually be out in April. And I'm more than happy to kind of share that with you and the tools that we're going to be using and taking to ensure that, we're tackling this head on. But it is a complex issue, because it's not, it's what is the cause of all of that? We have to tackle the issue of education. A startling statistic for you is that of 1,347 teachers in our city, only 26 are from Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. That is a damning indictment itself on a city that says how diverse we are, but the structural inequality that exists in the city is something that we're determined to kind of smash to pieces, but it's going to take some time. And are there any other questions? I think that's it. Well, thank you all very much.